Overview. In my experience, the real magic of a critical thinking workshop isn't just about learning new problem-solving techniques. It's about shaking up the way people think, breaking them out of their habitual mental loops, challenging their assumptions, and firing up parts of their brain they may not even realize are underutilized. The question is, could it be easier than we think? Could the key to real innovation be simply about bringing the right mix of minds into the same room and giving them a single challenge to focus on? I have seen that when people are placed in a structured environment where they are encouraged to look at a problem from multiple perspectives, something remarkable happens. They begin to recognize their own thinking patterns, and suddenly, they start seeing possibilities they never considered before. Isn't it obvious that most workplace problems stem from one-dimensional thinking, from decisions made without a full spectrum of perspectives? Could it be that the real solution isn't just better leadership, but rather a collective intelligence where every participant plays a role? So what if, instead of relying on a handful of dominant voices in a room, every cognitive style was given space to contribute? In my experience, when you intentionally design a discussion around a diverse mix of personalities, from the highly analytical to the deeply intuitive, from the pragmatic doers to the big picture visionaries, you don't just get opinions. You get a completely different way of looking at the problem. Isn't it fascinating how, when approached the right way, people naturally balance each other out? The structure-minded planners start seeing possibilities they never considered, while the dreamers begin to translate their ideas into actionable steps. Have you noticed how often decisions are made by those who speak the loudest, while the most insightful ideas go unheard? What if instead of asking, who has the best solution, we asked, how can every perspective in the room contribute to an even better one? When people recognize that their perspective isn't just welcomed, but essential, engagement shifts. They stop competing for airtime and start refining ideas together. Could it be that real innovation doesn't come from a single genius leader, but from a process that allows multiple types of intelligence to interact? And then there's the real challenge, breaking the comfort zones of thought. It's one thing to talk about thinking differently. It's another to actually do it. In my experience, most people operate on default settings, repeating patterns of thought without realizing it. But what happens when you introduce a challenge that forces them to think beyond their usual scope? What happens when someone who thrives on facts has to collaborate with someone who relies on gut instinct? Could it be that the real breakthroughs happen when opposing perspectives are forced to co-create something neither could have done alone? Isn't it obvious that we've spent too much time trying to fit people into a single model of problem solving? What if, instead, we acknowledged that different minds process information in different ways and designed problem-solving spaces that celebrate that instead of suppressing it? It's not just about critical thinking. It's about functional thinking, about understanding the hidden strengths in how each person naturally approaches challenges. Could it be that by simply shifting the way we engage with problems, we also shift what's possible? So, the real question is this. If it were truly possible to harness collective intelligence in a way that made solutions emerge effortlessly, why wouldn't we do it? What if the biggest limitation to solving complex problems isn't the problem itself, but the way we've been conditioned to think about it? Could it be that real transformation happens not by finding the right answer, but by learning how to ask better questions? Core functional elements of the workshop. Isn't it fascinating how most workshops focus on teaching people new skills, but very few focus on unlocking the skills they already have? I have seen that real transformation doesn't come from handing people information. It comes from changing the way they engage with what they already know. Could it be that the most effective critical thinking workshops aren't about teaching at all, but rather about creating a space where new insights naturally emerge? In my experience, the best way to achieve this is by bringing the right mix of minds together and structuring the conversation in a way that forces them to think differently. Have you noticed how certain personalities tend to dominate discussions while others sit back, even when they have incredible insights to offer? What if, instead of allowing the loudest voices to take over, we structured the discussion so that every cognitive style played a crucial role? Could it be that the real power of a workshop lies not in what is discussed, but in how the discussion is designed? I have seen that when you intentionally balance a group with different ways of thinking, some highly structured, some intuitive, some detail-oriented, some big picture, you don't just get a list of solutions, you get a dynamic problem-solving engine. Isn't it obvious that the best outcomes happen when you have structure without rigidity, flexibility without chaos, and logic balanced with creativity? Could it be that the key to unlocking real innovation is not in pushing for better ideas, but in curating the right balance of thought processes? And what about the way people process information? Have you noticed how some people need to talk things through to clarify their thinking, while others need quiet space to reflect before responding? Could it be that most discussions fail not because of bad ideas, but because they aren't structured in a way that allows different processing styles to thrive? In my experience, when people are given the space to contribute in a way that aligns with how they naturally think, they engage more deeply, generate better ideas, and collaborate more effortlessly. I've also seen how easy it is for problem-solving sessions to get stuck in familiar loops. People bring the same perspectives, argue the same points, and default to the same mental shortcuts. What if we deliberately disrupted that cycle? Could it be that forcing people to think through someone else's lens is the fastest way to break out of fixed patterns? Isn't it obvious that real breakthroughs happen when someone is challenged to explain their idea in a way that makes sense to someone who thinks completely differently? And then there's the question of decision-making. Have you noticed how some teams are quick to jump to conclusions, while others get lost in overanalyzing? What if the key to better decisions isn't just better reasoning, but a better process for integrating different reasoning styles? In my experience, the most effective solutions don't emerge from consensus alone, but from tension, the creative friction between different perspectives that forces deeper clarity. Could it be that the best workshops don't just generate answers, but train people to hold opposing ideas long enough for something new to emerge? So here's the real question. What if the most effective problem solving didn't come from working harder or thinking faster, but from thinking differently? What if the way we structure collaboration is just as important as the quality of the people in the room? And what if the real measure of a great critical thinking workshop isn't in the solutions it produces, but in how much it changes the way people think forever?